Hey everybody, Eric Renier here with Philippe J. Fournier for today's episode of The Numbers. Philippe, how are you doing so far?
Good day, Eric. We are 2 weeks through. We have 3 weeks to go. So far, everything is going well. Lots of numbers, lots of diverging numbers, especially yesterday, my goodness. I have many questions for you. We should talk about our projections in the latest polls. But where do you want to start today?
I do want to start with some of those diverging polls because we last chatted on our Patreon member episode on Saturday.
Oh, it was so good too, right? Yes,
I mean, you're missing out, folks, if you're not.
You should check it out.
thenumberspod.ca. But even the previous episode before that, we've gotten a few interesting polls since then. In addition to the daily trackers, which are still coming out every day from Liaison, Main Street, and Nanos. We had a new poll from Ipsos, we had a new poll from Abacus, and we had a new poll from MQO Research. And it's clear that there is a difference between these polls, right? Yeah. So I compiled them this morning for my newsletter. So the trackers all are pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
You got a 4-point lead in Main Street, a 5-point lead for the Liberals in Nanos, and a 6-point lead in Liaison. So not really much of a difference. And even like each party is all within 1 or 2 points of each other. So they're all aligned, which I find interesting because Main Street does their polling by text. Yep. Nanos is live callers and online, and Liaison is IVR. So it's like completely different methodologies. Yep. And then we got the other polls. So Ipsos had a 12-point lead for the Conservatives. Yeah. For the Liberals. MQO had a 10-point lead for the Liberals. And then Abacus had a tie. That's not the same. Those
39-39 tie. I was asked, maybe 50 times by journalists since yesterday, what the hell's going on there? And it's a question you and I face often, right? Why are the polls different? And most of the times, the answer is like, well, they should be different methodology. You trust the average. It's usually you and I don't get too worked up about differences in polls because usually, they fluctuate and then suddenly they fluctuate back. But this time we are 3 weeks away from an election, so the amount of undecided voters is supposed to go slightly down as we go forward into the campaign and closer to E-Day. How do we explain a 12-point lead versus a tie? I have a few guesses. Why don't you go first, Eric? Why don't you get in trouble first?
So, I mean, the bulk of the polls still agree with each other, right? Most of the polls have the Liberals somewhere between 43 and 44, 45. Ipsos has them at 46. Yeah. Most of the polls have the Conservatives between 38 and 40. Like, there's not that much disagreement. But we did have the 34% for the Conservatives in both the MQO and the Ipsos poll. The Polera polling that's being put out by Cursive Politics, they're not putting out full releases every day or every week, and you and I think we include it when they put out one of those releases.
They had one last week. Yeah, they had one last week, but not this Sunday.
Yeah. They also tends to be more on the larger gap than the smaller gap. But the margin, online polls, you can't technically have the margin of error, but if you assume the margin of error from the size of the sample, you can't actually reconcile a 46 and a 39 for the Liberals, and you can't reconcile a 40 and a 34. Based on the sample size, you shouldn't have a difference of 6 or 7 points between two different polls. So there is something going on between those polls. It could just be kind of outlier results in some of the regions, could have to do with weighting decisions that each of the polling firms are doing, because everybody has different kind of polling weighting formulas. But it's not easy to reconcile these numbers, which makes me think that the ones that are too high might be too high, and the ones that are too low are a bit too low in terms of the gap.
Well, usually, just by the odds are that's the case, that both will somewhat converge closer in the coming days, except with Abacus, it hasn't happened, right? Mm-hmm. Abacus saw the same kind of wide gap, 27 thing. I think the 27 point was the largest gap in January. And it was slower to close the gap between the Liberals and Conservatives through the winter. And it looks like the Liberals have hit a plateau. They haven't reached 40. in polling, whereas every other polling firm, Léger, the Angus Street Institute, Ipsos, all the others, have the Liberals in the low to mid 40s, or even 46 would be mid 40s. I'm looking, however, we should say though, if we look at the regionals of Abacus data, again, this is the best poll for the Conservatives, right? The tie is the best we can see from the Conservatives. Liberal is ahead by 10 points in Quebec, ahead by almost 20 Atlantic Canada, ahead by 6 in Ontario, which is a wider gap than in 2021, and 3 points behind the Conservatives, so statistical tie in British Columbia. This is a Liberal win. This is a Liberal victory. And so that's why I think it doesn't bother me as much as other people, because we do seat projections, we do a seat forecast, and I look at this Abacus poll, it says, well, okay, the top line numbers are tighter than what others see. It's still a Liberal win. Until I see the Conservatives having a 2-3 point lead in Ontario and dominating BC, the most likely scenario in the numbers is still a Liberal victory, for now at least.
Yeah, that's where I am too. When we're looking at these polls, there is a lot of focus on the actual numbers, but in terms of trying to, I mean, the whole point of what we do is not just to know whether it's 44.3 or 44.2. It's to try to give people an understanding of what the election outcome will be, and these polls range from a big Liberal minority to a big majority. Like if they're up by 12 points, they probably win 220 seats. But either way, we are still looking at a scenario where the Liberals are the favorites to win the most seats. And on balance, when you have one poll that shows a big minority and all the other polls show a majority of some kind, the balance still is very much on the side that if the election were held today, you would expect that the Liberals win not only the most seats, but probably are very comfortably in majority territory. The Abacus poll provides us with some, I would say, caution, just to make sure you don't get carried away in thinking that the 10, 12 point leads is where we are. It still could be. One of these polls will end up being, if the polling that we see now is what we see on election day, someone is going to be off.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If it ends up being in the middle, then everybody, the two on either side are going to be off by a bit. If it ends up being more on one side or the other, then the Ipsos and the MQO will either be very right or very wrong, and vice versa for Abacus. But in terms of just trying to predict, who's going to win the election, you still see in every single poll, including in Abacus, that it is still the Liberals who would win if an election were held today.
Oh, yeah. No, and there's no doubt. And also, if you look at the leaders number, very interesting stuff that from Nanos Daily, and it's fun that Nanos is not paywall during the election, but this morning, first choice for Prime Minister among all voters, so that includes voters of third parties and undecideds. Carney has a choice of 50% of respondents, and Poilievre is the choice of 32% of respondents. And so when you compare these two numbers to where their parties are, again, with undecideds, you see that Mark Carney pulls the Liberals upwards. He's more popular than the Liberal brand. And Poilievre, the party is at 34, he is at 32. So it's similar, it's very close, but don't forget, it's the same sample. We're not comparing two polls here. So Poilievre gets the Conservatives, basically, and nobody else. And that's why, so far, with 3 weeks to go, you won't see the Conservative number grow that much unless Monsieur Poilievre becomes more attractive to more voters outside the Conservative core.
It remains what we've been saying throughout, that, the top line numbers, good for the Liberals. The underlying numbers, also good for the Liberals. And that's what makes it feel more like these numbers are real. It's because there's not a lot of indications under the surface that there's a vulnerability in the numbers that could end up surprising people on election day. The age breakdowns are favorable to the Liberals. The leadership numbers are favorable to the Liberals. The issue sets are favorable to the Liberals. So there's not, if something happened where the Conservatives ended up winning, there'd be no indication of it in the polls. It would be a complete shock based on what the polls are saying.
Yeah. I want to take you back, again, this comparison between Ipsos and Abacus data. So So Ipsos has 46 liberal, 34 conservative. That 46 we have seen from the Angus Street Institute. We have seen Palace Data, I think, had a 46. We had Léger at 44. So it's that 34 for the conservatives that Kansas stands out, right? But okay, so let's look at the regionals. Again, I don't want to don't judge a poll by its regionals, especially when it's 100 cases. It's normal. It's just sometimes 20 out of 20, you will get all the regionals leading the same way. So in Ontario, Ipsos has 51 liberal, 31 conservatives. Okay, these are Jean Chrétien numbers, right? I mean, if the Liberals do win Ontario by 20 points, Eric, how many seats is that? Like 110?
Yeah, there would be
108, right? There's not much left not red in Ontario if that's the case. So this seems to be a tad high, even though it's not completely outside the range. Quebec appears entirely normal, 42 Liberal, 24 Conservative, 26 Bloc. That's well within range. I think these are almost identical to what Léger had. But then you look at Alberta, Ipsos, Alberta. 52 Conservatives, okay, a bit low. 40 Liberal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit. The thing is, again, for those who are saying, "Oh, this poll is way off," don't forget that if you miss a party by 10 points in Alberta, overall nationally, that's 1 point.
Yeah,
right.
That's
so
it.
Instead of having the Liberals at 40 in Alberta, if you have them at 30, and we have seen other polls that have the Liberals around 30% in Alberta, that puts the Liberals instead of 46, they're at 45. So it's not that big a deal. It's just that I look, all the numbers are favorable to the Liberals and they're all unfavorable to the Conservatives. So maybe it is that 20th out of 20, or perhaps, I mean, we're waiting for the Léger numbers. They have come out every Tuesdays in this campaign. So tomorrow we should, if Léger has a 45-37, then we'll know. Not will know, but we'll have a better indication of the landscape. Abacus, I don't know. This race, a tie race, you need a big boost of Conservative fortune and a bad turnout for the Liberals for that to materialize if we look at the whole picture, right?
Why don't we just discuss a little bit where the projections are right now?
Yes. Okay.
So,
let's see who's wrong and who's right.
So who's right today? Who's wrong today?
Okay. Want to go first?
Yeah.
I go first? I have the Liberals at 192 seats.
Ooh.
What do you have?
I have them at 204.
Oh, well.
We're starting to get apart here. Interesting.
I have the Conservatives at 125. What about
that
you?
seems to be the difference. I got them at 117.
117. Isn't that what O'Toole won? 117?
Or give or 121 or 119.
Oh, that's it's sheer. Okay, yeah. Give or take. So you have the Conservatives doing worse than the last election with more votes. Wow.
Yeah.
I have the Bloc at 16.
Okay, I got 17.
Well, clearly you're in. I think we've been different on the NDP for a bit, but they had better numbers in BC and in the prairies in recent polls. I have them at 9 seats. What do you have?
Okay, still got them at 4.
Really? Oh boy.
Yeah. So the difference does seem to be that I'm giving the Liberals more, and you're giving the Conservatives and the NDP more. I'm curious. Do you have your Liberal numbers by region? If you can just go through them quick. I'm just curious what the difference is.
Let's do it. Hang on. I absolutely have this. Okay. Atlantic Canada, I have 27 Liberal.
Okay, same here.
Quebec, I have 49 Liberal.
I have even less. I have 47.
Oh, by the way, we're recording this at it's 12:30 right now. On my way, I was at Radio-Canada this morning, and on my way back, I'm in the metro in Montreal, riding home, and my phone blows up. It starts vibrating, and I get like 10 texts in a row from journalists that were watching Yves-François Blanchet answer questions. And apparently, he referred to me as un imam d'agrégateur. So, I
Wow.
want to say thank you, but I'm not sure he meant it in a good way. Probably, maybe he was referring to you too, by the way. But you have them at 17, the Bloc, so maybe he likes you more.
Yeah.
I have in Ontario, I have 80 for the Liberals.
Okay, I got 85, so that's
85.
a difference.
Okay, 38 for the Conservatives. Oh, what's your NDP number in Ontario?
1.
You have 1. So that would be Hamilton Centre?
I'd have to look it up, but it might be.
It might be. I have 3. And I think I know it's Hamilton Centre, Windsor West, and London Fanshawe Way.
Fanshawe.
I know. I'm kidding. Prairies. I have. Why don't I just look at the map I'm sorry. I'm doing this the hard way because I'm tired. Okay. Manitoba. I have 6 Conservative, 5 Liberal, 3 NDP.
Yeah, I've got in Manitoba, I would have probably 8 Liberal. Because I have them picking up those NDP seats. I think that's probably the biggest difference. And then what do you got in Alberta?
And it's plausible too.
Yeah.
Alberta, I have 31-5-1.
Yeah, I got too many Liberals in Alberta, I think, because I have
8?
10.
You have 10 Liberals in
I don't think they're
Alberta.
winning 10, so I think that might be a bit of an exaggeration. But hey,
hang on
that's what the
though.
numbers show.
I think they're competitive in 10. It's just that will they win them all? You know?
Yeah, like I have them pretty much at their ceiling because I have their likely total topping out at 11. So
I have the Liberals between 1 and 10 so okay. But the thing is, again, perhaps it's that Ipsos number that pushed it up, right?
Yeah.
If the Liberals are in the low 30s in Alberta, and this is plausible according to the data we have, you double the Liberal number from the past election. Some of those urban seats are going to flip. And the Conservatives, I mean, you remember, and I know you mentioned on this podcast that polls have underestimated the Conservatives in Alberta in recent elections. It's just that whether they're at 66 or 63 or 68, it doesn't make that much of a difference. They're not at 75 in Alberta right now. And I think
finally,
Daniel Smith is not helping Pierre Poilievre also. So
I don't think so. British Columbia, I've got 23 Liberals.
23 Liberals. I have 22.
All right.
And 20 Conservatives and 1 NDP.
Okay, so we seem to have the biggest difference does seem to be
The
in
prairies.
Alberta and maybe a little bit in the prairies. But even if you take away 5 seats from the Liberals in the projections, they still drop to 199. It's still a pretty strong showing for them. So,
Oh, yeah.
all right, some divergences seems to be largely based in the prairies. I have more Liberals in Alberta and picking up those NDP seats in Manitoba. You have the NDP holding those seats in Manitoba and not picking up the seats in Alberta. And we'll see what happens on election night.
Can you imagine, though, Quebec, 47 seats for the Liberals you have, and I have 49. And I'm guessing your upper range is in the 50s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My likely range tops out at 51. My max range tops out at 58.
So, like, a 55... I mean, and if the Bloc goes down to the low 20s, a 55 seats for the Liberals in Quebec is plausible. And then it's... it's a half hour into the count of after Atlantic Canada, the call is going to be made. If the Liberals win 50 in Quebec, it's game over, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
wow.
Okay, so our projections are some differences, and someone will have bragging rights on election night, I'm sure. And
Well-
but we'll both be very mature about it all. I know that we will. One of the things I wanted to chat about was some polling that we saw from MQO.
Yeah.
Because we like having some of these regional numbers. And MQO is polling for Global Public Affairs. And they are putting out some polling every week. And they're doing oversamples in particular regions. So this week they did British Columbia. So their poll in BC as a whole was over 500. So it's a decent sample. The regional numbers, for the most part, are pretty small. So
Yes,
we have
they
to
are.
be very careful with it. But I think there's a few takeaways that I had. So one of them is that in the biggest sample, which was in Metro Vancouver, there was 45% support for the Liberals, 31% for the Conservatives, 15% for the NDP.
15 for the NDP, man.
And that is a pretty big lead. And then when they broke it down by the regions within the Metro Vancouver area, those sample sizes were very small. But the takeaway for me was that the Liberal support was pretty uniform.
Yeah.
They had just about as much support in Vancouver as they did in Burnaby and in Surrey. And the NDP also pretty uniform in Vancouver, Surrey. Burnaby, they had a little bit more, but they were still behind by more than 20 points. And then in the other metro, they were down. And the Conservatives seemed to have more of their support outside of Vancouver, Burnaby, and Surrey, which is what you would expect, right? Because that means they're winning more further down the Fraser Valley and maybe winning in Delta, Richmond, places like that.
Yeah.
Those were my big takeaways, at least from the Metro Van numbers. What did you think?
Well, I think that's many indicators and many polls right now that because every time, and I'm pretty sure you feel the same way, Rick. Every time I look at Vancouver, I go like, these orange seats cannot all flip, and then I look at the numbers, like, oh yeah, they can, right?
Yeah.
I know local races matter a lot, and I've been told countless times, well, that's not what we're hearing on the field. We knock on doors, and I understand. Like, when you do this, you're very committed, and must be heartbreaking to then go to our websites and see, oh, I'm going to finish third. And I get it. It's just that this is not a fluke anymore. At some point, you have to trust the data. And yes, they're small sample sizes, but that's many small sample sizes in a row that we see with the same rough numbers. Again, the Angus Street Institute last week, and I think the week prior, had a Metro Vancouver sample, I think, of 200, and it showed the same thing as here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I still have Vancouver East, but going in DP because the margins were so large last time, but it's not impossible that it's zero at the end of the night, if unless there's a big turnaround. And Burnaby, well, again, we can't really base this 45 respondents. That's a margin of error of plus or minus 18, I think.
Yes.
But it's still okay. So the NDP is 23 points behind the Liberals in this one. So
the thing is, the numbers match what we would expect them to.
yeah,
That's why I don't take too much. Into the specifics of the numbers. But like, you look at the Vancouver Island numbers, and on Vancouver Island, across the island, again, small sample, roughly about the same sample as we get as like in Atlantic Canada.
Yeah.
But it was the Conservatives and the Liberals neck and neck, the NDP further back, and then they broke it down into even further smaller samples again, between Victoria and the rest of the island. But again, you didn't see really any big difference. The NDP support was about the same. And I looked at it in my newsletter this morning. If I take my projections for the 4 ridings in Victoria and I average them out, I more or less matched exactly what this poll was showing for Vancouver, for Victoria. Now, that doesn't mean that the poll is right because it's only 34 people polled. It's not a lot. We shouldn't bank too much on it. But for me, what it means is that my model, which takes province-wide numbers and is producing these results in Victoria, and then I see a poll that is done specifically with some Victoria results, and the numbers are the same, tells me that my model's onto something, that my model is doing what it is supposed to do. We're not seeing in any of the polls that we've seen, any of these regional numbers that we've seen from MQO, from Angus Reid, from Léger, rarely a surprise. It's like the provincial-wide numbers, we project it down to the regions, and then we get regional polls that have the same results. So it goes back to exactly what I was saying about if the Conservatives won the election, we would not see it anywhere in the polls. If the NDP bucks all their trends, we would not see really any indication of it in the polls either.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. And we would see in those local numbers, we would see, maybe the NDP, but no, it seems pretty uniform. So, I mean, good luck again. Door knocking is important. Local races matter. But the data usually is more right than what you see on the ground. Please remember that. So, yeah, even if it's heartbreaking.
Do you want to do our riding of the day?
Yeah. Okay, Eric. So I have one. I think it's pretty obvious. And I'd like to spend a little time on it to ask you a few questions. My riding of the day is in Quebec, in La Mauricie. And it's Berthier-Masquinongé. And you know why. Former NDP MP Ruth-Hélène Brosseau, who was elected against all odds in the Orange Wave in 2011, but was re-elected in 2015, came so close in 19, so close in 21. She is running again. And this completely flips the projection. I know I heard indirectly this morning from people within the NDP that were really mad that I'm showing the NDP in fourth place in Berthier-Masquinongé. I was like, she announced yesterday she was running and nobody knew she was. I had removed her star candidate bonus because I didn't think she was. I mean, she's running a farm. That takes a lot of time. It's a full-time job, right? But she's running again. And according to the numbers I will publish tomorrow, I'm going to update the projection, but she has a shot at winning this. And I would like, I have a few questions. But first, am I crazy to think that she has a shot, Eric? What do you think?
No, I don't think you're crazy at all. Because, so this was the results last time on the new boundaries.
Yeah.
The Bloc won with 35%. The NDP was second, 32%. I think after Rosemont La Petite Patrie was the best riding for the NDP in all of Quebec.
Yep.
It's remarkable how much of her vote she has held on to.
Yeah.
And this would have been the fourth time she ran. There is, to her credit, she's taken a lottery ticket and turned it into something, right? Because she is the one who was a candidate who was a bartender in Ottawa. She just put her name in on the ballot to more or less as a favor to the NDP. She was famously in Las Vegas when she won, or at least
that's not when she won. During the campaign, she was in Las Vegas.
Yeah. And she wasn't really from the area. She didn't really speak French all that well.
No.
And what she did, she bought a property there. She lived there. She learned French. She really became kind of like a local hero.
Yeah.
Was reelected in 2015. And as you said, almost won in 2019 and 2021. They even did a TV show that was based loosely around her in Quebec.
Comedy. Yeah.
So, I think that with the Bloc dropping in Quebec, the NDP dropping a lot too, but I'm not sure, her vote is not an NDP vote. There's nothing about Berthier-Masquinongé that makes it an NDP riding.
Absolutely.
It's like a rural area. There's nothing that would make it an NDP riding. So, I think that she definitely has a shot.
So I looked it up. So she had around 18,000 votes in the last election when she lost by about 3 points. Considering the Bloc is in trouble, not everywhere necessarily, but that would include, the Bloc dropping 10 points or 12 points in Quebec. Yeah, guess what? They lost some in Berthier-Masquinongé as well. And so she has a 15 to 20 point bonus all on her own. Because again, she had the 32% of the vote. The NDP had 9 in Quebec. And in previous election, she had about the same share of the vote, and the NDP had 11 in Quebec. So really, she has a shot. Okay, so my second question is a bit sillier before we get to your writing of the day. But also it's a bit fun because it's not from me. It's somebody asked me this morning. Let's say she wins Berthier-Masquinongé. How long do you wait to give her the leadership of the NDP? Or do you give it right away on that night, or do you wait a few months to have an actual race? They could do far worse, right? If she wins and the NDP fits in a minivan after the election, she would be the perfect leader.
That would be quite a journey. Let's just put it that way.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure if she has that ambition. As you said, if she has a farm outside of Trois-Rivières, it's a bit far. It's a bit far to maintain that from Ottawa. But anyway, I'm really curious to see what's going to happen there. I kept on being shocked in 2019 and especially in 2021 that her vote held up as well as it did. Because the NDP has really tanked, and it should have really tanked, especially in a region like this.
Absolutely.
Right.
The Bloc barely won it. Right. I've talked to her before. She's, very nice, charming person. Her French is really good. I remember her French in 2011 when she won. Thomas Mulcair basically, hid her from the media because she couldn't speak very well French. She took lessons, and now she sounds like a francophone. So, so that's my writing of the day.
Very good job.
Yep.
So my writing is not out there. It's actually out in BC.
Okay.
BC has been getting a lot of visits from the leaders of late, and we saw that Pierre Poilievre spent some time in the interior. And so I'm wondering about the riding of Kelowna. So Kelowna, when it was called Kelowna Lake Country, it went to the Liberals in 2015. It was a bit of a surprise that they'd won that in the interior. The Liberals usually do not have lots of support in the BC interior. It's politically, it's probably closer to Alberta than it is to the rest of British Columbia. But in the last election, Conservatives had 42%, the Liberals had 26%. So it wasn't a huge gap. But we've seen the Liberals increase their vote in BC. We've seen the Conservative vote hold up. The NDP has gone really down. The NDP had 21% of the vote here. So if the Liberals can capture a big chunk of that, then they might have a shot. And then there was the MQO poll in the BC interior.
Yeah.
Again,
That's
it was
strange,
a sample of 94, but in the BC interior, it had 41 Liberal, 37 Conservative.
Wow.
Is it actually that close? I don't know. Small sample, and that would be shocking if the Liberals were leading in the interior. And according to the way MQO did it, it excludes the North. But if it is more competitive in the interior, Kelowna seems like a winnable riding for the Liberals.
Okay,
I'm
so
wondering
you
if
said,
they do.
what was the AQO numbers in the interior?
41-37 for the Liberals.
Okay, so let's say the Conservatives lead by 8 in the interior. We make a swing. That's still pretty good for the Liberals. What I'm looking at, though, here, in 2021, PPC had 7%, right? The Conservatives, they want that 7%, because if the NDP collapses and goes to the Liberals, yeah, it's a toss-up. But PPC voters, what's left of them, if they decide to support Poilievre, wow, that could be a really good one to watch. Interesting. Okay.
You know, it's a simplistic calculation, but if you look at the national polling right now, you take the vote that the Bloc has lost and the NDP has lost and the Greens have lost, and you give that to the Liberals, and you give the PPC vote to the Conservatives, you pretty much are exactly where things are right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's those ridings where the PPC did pretty well, like in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, around like the Niagara Peninsula, Windsor, and parts of the interior in BC. Those votes could end up making quite a big difference if a lot of them go to the Conservatives. So,
Wow.
an underappreciated aspect of this campaign.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that'll be it for this week. As mentioned, you can join our Patreon at thenumberspod.ca. We have the bonus episodes on Saturdays, and also you can join the Discord, which has been growing during the campaign, so that's been lots of fun.
Yeah.
And it's been lots of fun, Philippe, to chat with you so often, and I can't wait. I'm fébrile, as they say.
Fébrile, that's nice.
Looking forward to our next time we chat on Thursday.
Absolutely. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Merci Eric. Talk to you soon on Thursday.